All right, good evening, Hampstead. I'm going to call to order the school board meeting for Tuesday, October 26, 2021 at approximately 7:02 p.m. And I'll ask Melissa if you wouldn't mind taking the roll call.
Sure. Jason Giard.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Megan Malcolm.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools, Robert Thompson, and CFO, Jeff Dowd.
All right, thank you, Melissa. We'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Megan, if you wouldn't mind leading us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. Let's see, board members, we have meeting minutes, 3 sets of them. We have the October 12th regular meeting and non-public, and then we have the October 19th work session minutes. If you wouldn't mind taking a moment to take a look over, and I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve both the regular meeting minutes and the non-public minutes from October 12th, and also the meeting minutes from the budget work session on October 19th.
A motion, do I hear a second? Second. Second by Mr. Giard.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And Melissa, do we have any public comments?
No, there are no public comments tonight.
All right, thank you. All right, so I'm going to get into the current business. First agenda item is we're going to get into the 2022-2023 school and department preliminary budget presentations. I think, Mr. Thompson, you're going to kick us off and then followed up by your directors and school administration? And for the public and Mr. Thompson, this is only school and department. This does not include SAU. It does not include salaries, correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
So I just want to have our team come up. This is definitely a group effort. Mildly awkward, that's all right. All right, good evening. Tonight we're going to present to the school board and to the public the department budgets and the school budget on the expenditure side. This really means these are the items that we intend to include in our proposed FY23 budget. So this is not the entire view of the budget. We're not talking about personnel tonight. We're not talking about other operating costs. We're specifically looking at the expenditure side. I also want to preface, too, that what you see tonight really is a draft. We're looking for feedback from the school board. We're also looking for feedback from the community. We do intend to have several opportunities to have conversations with our public. That would be in addition to the public meeting, future school board meetings, or the deliberative session. There will be an opportunity for our community to look at this budget and to provide some feedback. So tonight you're going to hear from the various departments, the central school, the middle school, student services, technology, facilities, and then Nicole will talk a little bit about Pinkerton Academy. And so I really just want to walk through very quickly the overarching goals for our proposed operating budget, specifically tonight on the expenditure side. First is to provide for ongoing enhancements of the educational programming. As you've heard before, the Hsdsb School District is committed to continuous improvement. That means we are constantly looking at how we can be better. And so year after year, the operating budget that we propose really is the design by which the path that leads our schools to be better. Second goal, or overarching goal, is to keep Hempstead's educational facilities in good working order. And, you know, folks have heard me highlight before the dire need for additional space at Hempstead Central School. What can't be lost is the fact that the Hempstead School District has done a really great job of keeping their current facilities as up to date as possible. We want to continue this with the FY23 budget. Specifically, there is no deferred maintenance. When something needs to be fixed, it's fixed in a timely manner. Several areas are on a replacement cycle. Mr. Mackey will talk about paving and ceiling tiles and carpet. All of these things are strategically placed on a cycle so that we keep our building in good working order. And the third is to ensure that we have robust information technology systems to support students and strengthen our instructional and operational capabilities. Again, similar to our facilities, the Hempstead School District has made significant investment into technology for students and for us to remain operational. That means that we need to continue to have replacement cycles that brings in new equipment when equipment ages. We have, you know, an added area of concern is ongoing cyber threats and cybersecurity. So we need to make sure that we're making investments in information technology, not only to support instruction, but to support the operational needs of the school district. And then lastly, we need to be good financial stewards of the community. We understand this delicate balancing act between improving the educational program and outcomes for students, but also being mindful of the bottom line. We understand that we are asking our taxpayers to make a significant investment in the schools. We want to make sure that we're efficient and very prudent with the taxpayers' money. And that's why, you know, this year there was a significant focus on a budgeting methodology known as zero-based budgeting. This budget was built from zero. We did not look back and say, well, this is how much we spent last year, let's adjust for inflation, and that becomes the FY23 budget. That's not how we budgeted. We budgeted by having each one of the directors and the principals go through and identifying the specific needs that they have for FY23. We're literally talking about a certain number of boxes of crayons and glue sticks and workbooks and ceiling tiles. So you're really going to see that this budget reflects exactly what is needed for us to advance the educational programming. And I'm very proud of the work that all of the directors and our building principals have done to be able to present to you their budgets tonight. And so with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Cheney, who is going to walk you through the expenditures for the Hempstead Central School.
Good evening. I'm here to talk to you. First, before I get into the numbers, I wanted to just mention that I am anticipating a slight increase in enrollment for next year. This summer, we had talked a little bit about the large incoming kindergarten class. It is a big class, and we're anticipating even more of those students to be entering first grade next year, some kids coming back from private kindergartens and of that nature. So one thing to take into account is that I am anticipating a slight increase in the number of students that are attending the central school. The proposed budget for the 22-23 fiscal year is $204,451 for the Hempstead Central School, which is a decrease of $26,255 over this year. The points that I'm going to highlight here for you tonight, you can find in yellow on your budget reports in front of you. You'll note a savings of $53,000 in our math lines. This is the result of the investment that we made this year in the Big Ideas curriculum. With our investment comes 3 years of workbooks and online access. So the great news is we get to realize that savings next year. In the area of language arts workbooks, you will see an increase to account for our handwriting program. We use a program called Handwriting Without Tears, and I want to increase that across our grade levels for equity amongst our students. Our information access fees line has increased significantly. This is due to a reallocation from district lines to building-based budgets. This budget category includes access and subscriptions to blended learning environment tools such as Lexia, Seesaw, and Reflex. Finally, I wanted to highlight a decrease in our testing supply line. This number is actually more in line with our past expenditures and reflects our need for the 22-23 school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Our proposed budget for Hsdsb Middle School is $204,294. This is a decrease of $157,677 from this current year. And the reasons for these decreases are for the first two items that I've listed with math textbooks and social studies textbooks. So we are enjoying those textbooks this year. So that is a savings for us for next year. Our informational access fee has increased with regards to fees, and we've shifted the cost from the from the district level to the building level, and that includes things such as GoGuardian, which is a classroom management system, our online instructional licenses, and writing instructional supports. Another increase is I'm sure many of you have seen it on the cooking channel. It's for our family consumer science. It's a mobile demonstration table, and this provides a large workspace to demonstrate cooking techniques for our students in these classes. And in supplies for music new equipment, it's a decrease in $8,600, and that's due to equipment that was purchased this current year of 3 baritone horns, and we have a sufficiency of baritone horns for the upcoming year. In supplies, we are on the uniform replacement cycle. Our soccer team is ready to have new uniforms, and that's notated in the $4,430. I'm proud to say in round 2, our library, we did a really nice job this past year in upgrading the overall heart of our school in the furniture and writable tables and flexible seating. So that is a decrease for this coming year in 22-23 of $7,784. And the final one is athletic transportation, which is an increase in $3,000. This is indicated by, we are proposing to add an additional B team, which will be discussed when we present the full budget. So that's $3,000, that denotes a $5,000 increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm here to talk about the Student Services Special Education budget. We are proposing a budget of $4,290,945, which is an increase of $528,000 from the previous fiscal year. The budget costs that you're going to see tonight are due to the district's obligation to provide specific services under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So these numbers are based on actual student need. The line of professional services includes specialized supports the district provides because they are outlined in a student's individualized education plan and are part of that obligation under federal and state law. Examples are an educational audiologist, a board-certified behavior specialist, a vision specialist, and the teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing. You'll notice 3 lines dedicated to tuition. As the board is aware, there are times we need to seek an alternative placement from our community schools to best meet the needs of a student. These placements include another public school, which are expenses to another LEA or local education authority, DOE-approved special education placements, noted on this slide as tuition to private or other, and residential placements. A 5% increase in inflation is also budgeted, since that is the maximum amount these placements are able to increase their costs. The tuition to Pinkerton is in addition to the enrollment we pay for each student's general education costs. So an increase in special education students at Pinkerton, along with a possible increase of costs due to inflation, account for an increase in that line. An increase in equipment is to ensure our preschool program has iPads to use for data collection, specialized instruction, and assistive technology. And finally, the increase in special education transportation is in line with an increase in other costs to account for inflation and increased student need. Thank you.
Teresa?
Good evening. Our budget for technology at Hempstead School District proposed is $367,356 with a difference of $16,617. We have tech supplies, which is we're going to be saving $5,613. These include adapters, devices, cables, webcams, lower anticipated expenditures here. Our information access fees, these include things like our Zoom services, internet connectivity to the schools. This is an increase in $3,754. This includes $25,000 for a Hempstead School District website refresh. Some info access fees have also been shifted to Hempstead Middle School and Hempstead Central School. Next up is our software line. This includes productivity suites and things like Follett, our library software. This is a decrease of $12,066. The shift of non-district software, again, to the school budgets. For tech new equipment, what I'm talking about here is supporting our one-to-one for the students. This includes student Chromebook replacement in first grade and also in fifth grade. And this is an increase in $54,198. We have no new network equipment this year, with a savings of $54,631, with a shift to replacement equipment. Tech replacement equipment is a decrease in $31,874. Lower cycle replacement costs include HMS computer lab replacement and the normal staff device replacement cycle. The business computer services, this includes our student information system, PowerSchool, and our budgeting software. This is an increase of $64,195, and this is an increase in the district enterprise applications. Thank you very much.
All right, and on to facilities. The proposed budget is $839,478. The current budget, you'll see $2,695,449. That difference that you're seeing right there, that also includes $1.66 million of the 60s renovation. So that was tucked into my budget, so it looks like I'm saving a whole lot more than we really are, so. For the first page, the zero-based budgeting was huge for facilities. I was really able to dive deep and adjust all my needs to whatever best fit was for each account line. So on this first page, you'll see that all the major lines show improvement, whether a little bit of an increase, a little bit of a decrease. That right there was a huge help when it came to the zero-based budgeting. On the next page, you'll see a little bit of a different feel. We have new equipment for the custodian maintenance line. We have nothing needed for this budget year, the current next budget year. Replacing equipment for the custodians, we're going to be replacing all those blue chairs that you used to see here at the school. They are end of life, and the racks that come along with them, as well as I'm going to be replacing some portable dehumidifiers. New equipment for grounds, $4,199. I'm looking at getting a snow blade for the tractor so that snow removal is a little bit more efficient and we have that flexibility in case the truck goes down. Replace equipment grounds, we don't really have much going on there, replacing a few minor pieces, so we're saving $8,137. Sites, I'll be doing some paving this year, so that line increases $39,119. And the final line, as I said before previously, the renovation was tucked in there. So I can't exactly remember the number that I have projected for repair and maintenance, but it is a little bit lower than usual years because I'm doing a lot more in-house and, strategically going at some other projects. So that would be facilities.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the enrollment numbers. So if I can draw your attention to the elementary pre-K through 8 line first, we have currently 819 students as of October 1st. Our projected enrollment for next year is 831 when you combine the central school and the middle school. So that's a slight increase. And let's look above now at Pinkerton. So we currently have 392 students over at Pinkerton, plus 3 enrolled in HSET or ACT programs, for a total of 1,212 students this year. Our projected enrollment is going to go up just slightly, 2 students, plus the projected enrollment at the district, at the Hsdsb districts in our K-8 buildings. We expect there to be 1,228 students in the district pre-K through grades 12 next year. This slide demonstrates some of the tuition expenses associated with our 9th through 12th graders attending Pinkerton. You can look at our actual line in the middle, it's blue. We have 392 students at Pinkerton this year. Their tuition's $13,698. Our projected enrollment for next year is 394 students. I estimated the tuition will go up 5% next year. So that will bring the tuition cost to $14,383 per student. The estimated total will be $5,666,902 for tuition. It's important to note that these tuition costs do not reflect additional special ed costs or the costs of HSET, which is a program that some students opt for if they don't want to graduate and they graduate a little bit early, and most people would recognize that as a GED program.
And at this time, we'll take any questions that the board might have in regards to our expense budget.
I'll start it off with more of a statement to the public that, there wasn't a lot of discussion tonight about this because we did have a rather, I'd say a longer working meeting last week of about 2+ hours that we went through line by line with each one of the directors and administrators, which was appreciated as that zero-based budgeting definitely, shine light on some things, kick the cobwebs off a few things, and had some really good, just thoughtful discussion about where can we save money, where can we look at, places to lower the budget. So we definitely appreciate that. Any questions from anyone on this? I don't know if it's more of a statement on the last piece about the Pinkerton. I mean, the good news that for anybody that was reading along and listening was we had budgeted $5.9 million for Pinkerton. We have less enrollment, good or bad thing there, but so it looks like we're going to only spend $5.36 million. So saving the town $600,000 this year is what we anticipate. Is that correct?
Estimate is 5,666.
Talking about the 2021, 2022
Actual.
actuals.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we're saving about 600-ish.
In the current year.
In the current year.
Perfect, yeah.
So that'll be coming back to the town if it stays as that by the end of the year. I mean, that's what we're looking at there. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, approximately. We haven't had final billing from them, but yeah, that's where it's looking.
Okay. But we're anticipating with just as many students going up 300,000 next year because of anticipated inflation. Okay.
We round high.
I'm sorry?
I anticipated a 5% increase. Sometimes it's not 5% increase
Yep.
in tuition, so we round high a little on the higher side.
Yep, that makes sense. A little more careful, but all right. Thank you.
I was interested to have you maybe speak to what we kind of talked about at this working session about the exercise of going from, starting from a zero budget and what you found, how many things or was it useful because you found things that were just in there because they were always in there, and you actually found that you weren't using things and things like that? And I just think people might want to hear about that a little bit.
Yeah, really, I want to give credit to this team right here because they're the ones that do the bulk of the work. Let's just be clear about that. I ask a lot of really tough questions, and I think for them, you take when you traditionally budget, not just here in Hampstead, you look at each budget line, you take a general look at what you have expended in a previous year and make a prediction about what you may spend. And that's what budgeting is, right? You are trying to predict what future expense will be. Under this model, they had to identify what specific items they were going to buy, what that item was going to cost, and if it's a tangible item, they have to, add shipping to that, and then they also have to predict what inflation is going to look like. It's not an easy task to do, and I can tell you that they have smiles on their faces tonight, but I know that the amount of work that they did is very commendable, especially when we talk about the start of the school year. And some of this is a prediction, and we predict inflation to be around 5%. Well, I know specifically with facilities, there's some areas where we predicted 8% just because of current costs. When we were not able, there's a couple of areas where you cannot do zero-based budgeting. Student services is one, and facilities is another. We can't predict how many faucets in the bathroom are going to break next year. So when you're not able to employ a zero-based budgeting model, you look at a 3-year average. You'll have 2 years of actuals, so you can go to 20 and then 21, and then you look at what is budgeted for 22, and you take an average. So if it is not possible, because it's not entirely possible, then you'd look at that 3-year average. And this is a process that continues. We're going to continue to refine this all the way up until the final budget is presented to the board.
Well, I definitely want to say that I appreciated the work that has gone into this, even to this point, seeing things that you obviously recognized were not things that were being used in the district and that were not needed. So I think this was a great exercise to sort of weed that stuff out so that we're not paying for things that we're not even using.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that, this year we have the benefit, if you look at many of the department and building budgets, they're going down because of this exercise in zero-based budgeting. There will be years when they go up, and we'll come back with the same argument. We've looked at what our need is for this upcoming school year, and it just so happens that there's increase. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, so.
Yeah, I think that's important to call out that, if you do look at all the departments, pretty much all of them are flat-ish or going down with, we've talked about student services. That's really, I'd say, out of our control to a point, right? A lot of that is federally mandated. There's certain things we have to do. There's certain things we cannot do in-house right now because we don't have the space. And, as we've talked, once a student goes out of district, which we don't want, we want them here with their neighbors, their friends, it's hard to bring them back in. So, when people say, well, what can we do to lower the cost? When we talk about the central school, it's not just about adding a new library. It's also that space that we need for learning so we can keep some of this in-house. We think that it's expensive to have in-house. Look at the bill we're getting when it's out of house. It takes a lot more. I look at it just like when I'm doing something at my house. If I'm doing some plumbing, well, I can do it pretty cheap on my own, but if I have to, send it out, I get a lot more charge to me. So it's the same thing here. So, appreciate that. Anything from anybody right now? The only thing I'll add to this discussion, though, is what we did talk about last week in the working session was it'd be great if there's opportunities to look at and work with the town select board on if there's places that they go out for contracts that we could join in on those bids. But, it's going to be paid out of 2 different budgets, but at least go in and negotiate based on a larger bid. So I did talk to the chair of the select board, and he was definitely open to it. So we'll be looking in the coming weeks for a couple board members, yourself, Bob, and Jeff, to have a working meeting with a couple of members from the town to look at where is it that they're going out to bid on things such as paving, such as oil, energy. I'm sure there's other areas of opportunity that we could try to reduce the cost for the town. I know that I would like to be part of that. I don't know if anybody else would want to volunteer. Jason? All right, Jason. So I'd like to, at some point over the next week, get some communication going with Mr. Murphy and getting something going on the books for us to meet wherever, but to start talking about what's in the lines of the budget that we may be able to negotiate costs down even more.
I think that's a great idea.
So, I don't know, board members, any thoughts on that?
I agree with that 100%. If we can do that, I think we should.
Okay. All right, so we'll report back at the next meeting what's going on with that at least. Hopefully we have some momentum by then, but that's the point is, we may not be able to take it out of the budget, but that's something we can anticipate maybe as an opportunity in the actuals for the next fiscal year.
Excellent, and it's also important to note, we will put this presentation online, and again, as we move towards finalizing our proposed operating budget, we're also going to put, the very detailed budget report online. We'll provide opportunities to have conversation about what's in there. Really, one of the goals that we've set out all along was, obviously to implement zero-based budgeting, but also to bring great transparency. These individuals know this budget so well. You can ask them any question about any line, and they can tell you down to the nickel what they're spending money on. And I think the community needs to be able to interface with some of them to be able to just see just the level of thoughtfulness and detail that goes into every nickel that's going into this proposed budget. We're proud of it.
Yep. So are you saying you'll put online not only the presentation, but the records behind that?
We will. We're going to pause on that. We're still, so again, as we said at the beginning, we're still working to finalize the proposed operating budget, which includes not only the expenses, but also salaries and other aspects of the operating budget. Once we've gotten to that point, we will. So we can put this budget presentation online as early as tomorrow, but the full operating budget, we're looking out further into November for that.
All right. Is that going to be at the first meeting or the second meeting? Do you anticipate? I don't see what the schedule of the meetings are, but when do you anticipate having that full holistic view?
I think it is the second. I want to double check. I think it's the second meeting if I look at the schedule.
That's
That's the second meeting, the 23rd.
I can't see it.
Yeah, so the 23rd?
Yep.
23rd.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right, so moving on, talk about the warrant article discussion for HCS and any updates on that, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had previous discussions at the board level in regards to the need for the addition at the Hampstead Central School. We are currently still working to get firm numbers for the overall cost of that project. There's a little bit of a delay in that just because of the unpredictability right now of the construction market, what inflation will look like. And we really want to make sure that when we bring a number to the board, it is as accurate as possible. One area that we discussed at the previous board meeting was what would it look like if we were to break out some pieces of this project and include them in the operating budget. And we can put a slide up in just 1 second. And what we would be talking about potentially doing, and that's why we want to talk to the board to get their feedback, is looking at including what we'll call the alcove project in the operating budget. Now, the alcove project is, if you look at the 60s wing, in fact, I'm gonna stand up over here. Okay, so if you look at the graphic behind me, this is a graphic of the central school, and it actually highlights what last year was the proposed building project. And you'll see that highlighted in here in yellow, blue, orange, and then some repurposing of spaces in purple. If you look on the right-hand side, highlighted in red with an arrow, is a piece of the 60s hallway wing. Currently, that is an alcove. Part of the proposed project last year would be to add 2 classrooms to that space included in the overall project. Well, we've been in touch with Trident, who has really provided us with some numbers. If we were to add the alcove classrooms, those 2 classrooms right there that you see highlighted in red, to the operating budget for FY23, what would that look like cost-wise? And really, the goal would be to fund a portion of the project through our regular operating budget, to have the remainder of the project on a warrant article that we would, look to seek a bond for. Now, the reason for adding a portion of that to the operating budget would be to keep the overall warrant number lower, which ultimately means that the bonds that we would seek would be a lower figure, and some of it would be absorbed through the operating budget. So the numbers that we received to add those 2 alcove classrooms are between $875,000 and $1 million if we were to just do that project on its own. Now, what happens when we do that project is we would add 2 classrooms. Now, on the second floor, which is currently the Ventures classroom and also some technology storage, that classroom would lose its windows. And so what we would be proposing is there's a wall that separates the Ventures classroom from the classroom next door. That is I believe it's a 4th grade classroom? 2nd grade classroom. Those classrooms do not meet the 900 square foot minimum standard for classrooms, so we can only put small classes of students in there. So our proposed plan would be to remove the wall in between those 2 classrooms to create a larger space. We would then move our library media center to that existing space, which would free up a classroom where the library is currently housed. So again, if we were to look to have this as part of the operating budget, the expense for this project would be $875,000 to $1 million. And I'll entertain any questions that the board might have. I would also welcome Mr. Dowd if there's anything that you'd like to add as well.
Well, I will note that it seems like a lot, the $875,000 to $1 million to add 2 classroom spaces to the building. We're dealing with a building that is structurally very sound, and you're looking to add 2 classrooms to that space. It's not always inexpensive. One of the classrooms on the bottom would also need a bathroom, restroom facility for if it were to be used for kindergarten. So we're looking to put that space in, which, a building of this age is not inexpensive. So it does seem like a lot. I don't think it's an unreasonable amount based on what the construction costs are, what the actual costs are, how much it is to upfit rooms to state standards these days. So.
Okay.
Megan has a question.
Oh, Megan, sorry.
So I think we touched upon this last time, but the idea would be to have this project combined with the overall project. So there would be no rework. There would be everything would happen. What is the word?
Simultaneously?
Simultaneously, yeah.
Yeah, it happens in tandem. So essentially, what you see here is what was proposed for the addition last year.
Yep.
What we're doing is we're separating out this one component of it, adding that to the operating budget. The remainder of what you see would still go out on a warrant at a lower amount because we factored some of this into the operating budget.
Can you explain a little bit what benefit that would bring? I mean, obviously, besides the obvious of a couple more classrooms, but I think I still have that worry of if you can fit more kids in there doing this, what happens when they move up to another grade and we don't have space in the other areas still?
I
Yes,
think,
so what this does in part, I think, is, again, I have addressed, what I believe are my concerns with the current instructional space and how instruction is impacted by the current physical environment. So this does a couple of things. One, it gives the library media center space to be an actual library media center and not just a classroom that houses books. I think that's critically important. And then it adds classroom spaces that are needed just because of our increased enrollment. And also what it can do too is it can free up space. Again, we've talked about special education. It could provide the opportunity to free up other spaces to increase, special ed programming. Basically, the bottom line is it gives us some flexibility and a little bit of breathing room. Now, the important thing to note is the addition of those 2 classrooms is not the be-all, end-all. It doesn't solve our problem with space. It provides a little bit of relief in the short term, but that's why it would be important for us to add the 2 Cove classrooms to the operating budget and to move forward with the warrant article for the rest of the addition. This is really about how and when we're going to fund these projects.
Thank you.
I think for me, I mean, it's still interesting to could be, but without a few more missing pieces, right? We still don't know what the overall budget is going to be for the district, and we don't know what the overall cost is for the addition based on last year's numbers plus inflation.
Right.
So I think when we have all those pieces, then we can have a more thorough discussion around what's the strategy here. I mean, ultimately, yes, we do need a couple classrooms immediately. I mean, we've been saying that, and it's here. This just kind of hedges our bets a little bit, but with the greater goal, to your point, the overall, all classrooms, all the addition is really what's needed. So I think once we have those pieces, we'll be able to have a more thorough discussion.
I agree.
I agree.
Questions, comments? All right. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. All right, so the next agenda item is to address the petition for special meeting. This is an update from, what, did I miss something? Oh, I was so anxious to get into that. Thank you for correcting me. 60s Wing with Mr. Dowd.
Yes, thank you. The 60s wing work continues. A couple updates. The brickwork is complete on the 60s wing. Concrete ramps have been poured. Asphalt has been laid down. We're waiting on metal panels for the outside to fit like under where the windows go, and those should be in within the next 3 weeks to a month. We have our first round of classrooms being worked on as we speak. So I'd like to extend once again a very special thanks to our teaching and instructional staff in the 60s wing for being able to temporarily relocate their classes, and to other teachers in the building who have been listening to and hearing the construction vehicles as they're wrapping up their outside work. My 14-year-old went back with me to look at the work and said, when did they build this? They didn't build it, it's the same one. It just looks totally different, totally new. It fits in a lot better. And I'm really excited about the quality of what we're going to have once this is done. So the work progresses.
Yeah. Good.
Good stuff.
Questions, anyone? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I can get into the petition for special meeting. So just an update for everyone. At the last meeting, we had received the petition, and we had the motion to get our legal counsel to take a look at the petition and to also do an analysis of sorts to provide us input as to direction that the board should go. We have received that opinion from our legal counsel. I'm going to read a few things from our legal counsel so that the public understands the direction we're going and why. Is that, we did do our due diligence. We did hear the community about the petition. We definitely did, what we feel we should be doing in listening to the legal counsel of what is needed per the RSAs and whatnot. So I'm going to read just a few excerpts from this and then get into a little bit of discussion with the board. So without further ado, per legal counsel, the question of the school board's responsibilities with respect to this petition begins with an analysis of which body, the school board or the legislative body, i.e. the voters at the meeting, has the authority to make the district's health policies. Like other municipal corporations, the school district consists of a legislative body and a governing body. The legislative body is the district meeting. The governing body is the school board. RSA 2147 and RSA 2148 defining the legislative body and the governing body. The legislative body controls the appropriations for school district expenditures, RSA 197.1. The school board is the managing board of the district and has the authority to elect all teachers, prescribe the regulations of the district for the management of the schools, and has the duty to provide at district expense education to all pupils residing in the district. Each body may only act within the scope of authority granted to it by statute. School district meetings may occur within the powers granted by the state, and boards may only act within the authority expressly or implied granted by the statute. RSA 189-1A2 states that elected school boards shall be responsible for establishing the structure, accountability, advocacy, and delivery of instruction in each school operated and governed in its district. To accomplish this and to support flexibility in implementing diverse educational approaches, school boards shall establish in each school operated and governed in its district instructional policies that establish instructional goals based upon available information about the knowledge and skills pupils will need in the future. In addition, NHRSA 189-15 further states that the school board may, unless otherwise provided by statute or state board regulations, prescribe regulations for the attendance upon and for the management, classification, and discipline of the schools, and such regulations, when recorded in the official records of the school board, shall be binding upon pupils and teachers. Moreover, the superintendent of the district is responsible for implementing these board policies. NHRSA 194-C:4, outlining the requirement that each school administrative unit or single school district shall provide the following superintendent services: the daily administration and provision of educational services to students at the school facility, including but not limited to fiscal affairs, staff, student, and parents, safety and building issues, and dealing with citizens at large. So this is where legal counsel's opinion about the petition. Based on this, it is our opinion that the proposed warrant article is not lawful because it usurps the policymaking authority granted by the legislature to the school board and oversteps the authority granted by the legislature to the meeting. Therefore, the school board has two options. It may elect to not call a special meeting, or two, it may elect to hold the meeting, but take the position that the petitioned article is advisory only. So, further, the legal opinion says, the risk that you announce that the vote is advisory, there will be a low turnout, and only the invested petitioners attending in the vote would be in their favor, or not. Keep in mind that as traditional meeting format, petition article could also be amended on the floor by anyone who opposes and extend the further debate. Ultimately, this is the decision by the school board to make. However, the first option preserves the board's role as policymaker for the district. If you choose not to warn the meeting, you will not be the first district to do such. So that is from our legal counsel, their opinion about this, about to, either not do the special meeting or do the special meeting as an advisory only. At this point, I don't know if we want to have discussion first or we can put the motion of what we would want, but I think maybe have a little bit of discussion first on people's thoughts or opinions on this right now. And as you know, I can certainly start with my opinion, but I'd rather.
I can start.
Okay.
I appreciate the legal input on this because this frankly goes above and beyond any of our expertise on this board to get into every single RSA. We obviously have to have a basic knowledge, but when you start getting into very nuanced pieces. So for me, based on my base belief that we always go with our experts and put a lot of weight behind what they tell us, I am going to go with support the legal interpretation that we are being given, and I would support not moving ahead with a special meeting. I do understand we have a choice to have a special meeting and then have it only be advisory. My personal opinion is that we are in the midst of budget season. We are in the midst of trying to deal with a very serious space issue at our central school, and this takes away resources from that, especially if the board is being advised that should we hold it, it would be advisory only. Between the legal interpretation and what I have looked at, the state RSAs are pretty clear that a school board makes policy, and that is what it boils down to. I don't want to discount what anyone in the town thinks, especially when we have parents speaking up. But I do also feel that this board has been quite open in hearing the feedback from our parents. And frankly, from what I've heard, it ends up being pretty 50-50. I think so I do obviously want to hear what everyone else has. That's kind of where my mind is at this point.
I guess I'll throw in a few tidbits here of where I'm at with this is that, when we talk about having it as an advisory-only vote, to me, there's a few things that weigh in on this, is that to do an advisory-only vote, we do have to set up almost a true voting session like it was in any other voting day in the town. So that does come with additional cost. The time to get that set up, in my opinion, is not going to be overnight. It's going to take weeks, probably a month, maybe a little bit more than a month, and we're in the holiday time frame. But more than that is this board has talked about where we are with mask. And right now, if you look at where we are as a district with mask, we've done a pretty good job with keeping the rates down with positive rates, while students are 90+% of the time do not have mask on. If you look at their school day, they are wearing their mask in the hallways, to and from class. In that, it takes 2 to 4 minutes per class, over 7 classes. You're looking 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more, but over the course of a 6 to 8 hour day, it is not much. It is that 90% that they don't have their mask. The next piece of it, when we talk about time, we're talking if we were to do a vote a month or 2 away, we've also said as a board that when the vaccine is available to our students from 5 years old to 12, we are more than likely more apt to vote to make mask optional. Well, just today it was voted on by 17 members of the FDA, I believe it was, to move forward with having the vaccine ready and available for students. It goes next week to a 3-person panel, and then it goes to ultimately I think it's the Director of Health and Services. So we're looking at weeks away from students having the vaccine. So in my mind, it doesn't make sense to do a lot of logistical activities for voting if we are truly intending, which I know for myself, I know I would intend as soon as that vaccine, or within a couple weeks of that vaccine being available for students, we would move to mask optional. So we're already going to achieve what we're looking to do, or at least what some people are looking to do. But I think as a community, we're looking to do is get back to that normal from before 18 months ago. And I don't think we need the special meeting to do that. So that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, this is a tough one because it's, you don't ever want to look like or appear that, we are not listening to parents and community. But again, I do also think that this board has made it a priority to be very transparent. I definitely appreciate the emails we've received on both sides of this issue. But again, like Caitlin and David said, the school board, decides policy. That's what we're elected to decide matters of policy. It's the responsibility of the district employees to enact that policy. The voters at district meetings decide on budgets, contracts, capital expenses, et cetera. So having a special district meeting on policy would result in an outcome, obviously, that's advisory only. And I think that for that reason, it's fiscally irresponsible to move forward with that. It's going to it's going to be an expense to the town that for an advisory only vote, which again, we know that there's strong feelings on both sides of the issue. And again, like David said, vaccinations, they're imminent. We're looking possibly just a few weeks. And then at that point, I think when parents have the choice of whether or not they can vaccinate or not vaccinate their child, then I'm, the story's different for me there.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and repeat everything you guys have said, but considering the legal advice, the time, and the money that holding a special meeting would take, I would lean towards going with legal advice and not holding the special meeting.
And I would just have to echo everything everyone else has already said. I mean, I've been pretty clear, transparent with what my thoughts are and where I want to be and where I want to head with this. For me, it comes down realistically to the timing. I mean, the reports that were coming out this afternoon really said that the end of the first week of November, which is 10 days from now, is when they're really considering releasing this and making this available to students 5 to 12. If we have this special meeting based on the timing that we've gone through, we're looking at a month, maybe more away. So it's kind of a moot point. While I completely respect what the folks in our community have done to generate this petition, to put the work and put the effort into it, it just seems like we're there. So to go through all these hoops of setting up the new meeting to get everything done that we need to get done, it almost seems like it's not needed.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think one thing we didn't say, and I know, I think as individuals we probably have said it, is that by allowing a special meeting, it sets precedent for the future when there's any other policies that are not agreed upon, is that there's some friction in the community, some different opinions in the community, which this could lend itself to just having lots of special meetings and advisory meetings, which I don't think makes sense also, especially given the timing on this. So I think that's also worth mentioning, because if we do it now, next week, if there's a policy on bullying, there's another policy on homework, there's another, there's a lot of things that can be done. But I do hope that in the future there are times that the board would entertain, even if it's advisory only, because I think sometimes we don't get to hear everything that that's out there. So I think that in the future that there could be opportunities for that. I just don't think it's for this one because of the timing of the vaccine. So, any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, that timing is a huge thing
Right.
for me, too.
Correct. I'd also just, there are, as legal counsel has said, we have other towns that have decided not to move forward with special meetings. We know that there was a town that did move forward with a special meeting for advisory only, and it actually got overturned, and the district kept mask because it was, it was outvoted almost nearly double to keep the masks versus making masks optional. And in another district, it almost turned to fisticuffs. So I think that this also lends an opportunity to an unfavorable outcome to a lot of people. And we're so close, folks. That's what it comes down to. We're very close. And this board is can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I just to echo that, I mean, I think there is a little bit of a misconception that we want masks, and I think our goal is to get to no masks or mask optional as soon as possible. So
Yep.
we're working there, we're getting there, we're making steps, and we'll get there soon.
So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I'll read the motion out loud. I will send it to you after, Melissa, because it's a little wordy, but I think it hits the points that we've been mentioning here. So make a motion to decline calling a special meeting, and that the board refuses to warn a special meeting on the citizens' petition to amend the district's COVID-19 return to school policy to provide that students, staff, and visitors may not be required to wear a mask, and that to do such for the following reasons. The board, and not the citizens' meeting, is responsible for adopting the policies of the district. The legislature and the Department of Education have granted policy-making authority to the school board. The legislature has not granted policy-making authority to the school district meeting. The petitioned article goes beyond the authority granted by the legislature to the meeting. The board's current policy is lawful in that a subdivision of the district is following the health recommendations of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the citizens of the district should not be required to participate in a special meeting where a yes vote would produce an unlawful outcome.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all approved? All right, unanimous. All right. And again, thank you to all for being part of this discussion and the activities associated with it. Let's see, just put a couple things away here. All right. So the next one, we're going to talk with Mr. Thompson about transition from Blizzard bag to remote learning discussion. And as we know, this is a discussion, it's not a decision yet.
Thank you. As I identified in my entry plan process, we had many conversations with staff and families, and one topic that seemed to come up quite often was the concept of Blizzard bags. And members of the community, including our teachers and parents and board members, had some very specific feedback about Blizzard bags. More specifically, in the era of remote learning and what we were able to do during the pandemic, could we transition to a remote learning model? So we convened a committee. We've had 3 meetings to date. That committee includes both building principals, our Director of Student Services, our Director of 21st Century Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, our Director of Technology, and also our 2 association presidents. So we've had some preliminary conversations. That group, we really looked at what would a schedule look like if we were to do a remote day on a snow day, and then also what would be some of the expectations for teachers. So again, we're talking specifically about a day where there's inclement weather at school and we cannot have school. So we have come up with a proposal, and we're still working out the details. I want to be just make that known. Essentially a draft schedule looking at a 9 to 2 school day. We'd also build in a 45-minute universal break from 11:15 to 12 o'clock. And really, that's just because of feedback that I've received both this year and in my previous district. If you're a parent and you have 3 or 4 children in the school day, you want one lunch. You don't want to have to feed your children at 4 different times based upon the master schedule. And so the draft schedule that we've been working with really is reflective of flexibility for parents, for students, and for teachers as well. We also take into account the fact that the traditional snow day allows for time-honored traditions of snowball fights and sledding, and we want to preserve some of that. We don't want children sitting behind a screen for an entire school day. So we want to be able to have flexibility. So we've developed a schedule. We're currently working on expectations. We have began collecting feedback from staff and from families. In one day, I sent out a survey yesterday to parents. We've got 100 responses. Many families are concerned about technology, about having enough computers. We would make sure that every family had the technology that they needed. Also, internet access. That is another question that parents had, and that is something that we're able to help provide support for. There are some obstacles. I can tell you that it is challenging, and I say this from experience. It is challenging for our teachers who have their own young children at home on a snow day to pull double duty and provide remote instruction and provide for their children's remote instruction. And I know this because I come from a family of educators, and that's an obstacle for us. We also have obstacles with some of our staff with their internet connectivity. But these are all obstacles that we're going to dive deep into. I do believe that we can solve them. We have a model from last year that worked that I think needs to be tweaked. So I'm optimistic that we'll have a very robust remote learning program put in place for snow days. And that's not to say we will still have some traditional snow days. That's really important. This is just looking at the big picture, at the overall number of snow days that we may have. If we have a situation where electricity is out in any portion of the town, we may elect for a regular snow day. So everything right now is in draft form, but I'm confident that the progress that we're making will yield a really great final outcome for remote learning snow days.
So we're talking remote, like the teacher's going to be on the Zoom and they're actually going to get teacher instruction, like just so they can just keep going from where they were in class?
The proposal that we're looking at would involve live synchronous instruction. Now, the question becomes, what's developmentally appropriate? Because what may be developmentally appropriate for an 8th grader may not be for a kindergartner. And so those are conversations that we're having about what works. What works for our students, first and foremost, but then also what works for our staff as well. And I can tell you, we may move forward with, our first attempt at this being more of a pilot, and then we get together afterwards, collect feedback, and we make adjustments. So this could be a work in progress as we sort of build the ship mid-sail.
Traditionally, how many snow days do we have a year, on average? Does anybody know that? I'm looking at Mr. Dowd.
Pretty much different than,
But
depends on the year.
is it like 4 or 5, maybe? So we're talking 4 school days a year. So if we were to do like a kind of beta test of this year, see how it goes, is that what you're thinking when you say, roll it out, see a pilot?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to what we said earlier, we're about continuous improvement. We know that if we put something in place and it doesn't work for our students or it doesn't work for our teachers, we're going to go back to the drawing board and come up with something. It really is about looking at the master calendar. When do we want to get out of school? That really plays a piece in it.
Okay.
Well, as somebody who despises blizzard bags, I'm going to use that word. It's a strong word. I love this because one of my biggest issues with blizzard bags was sitting kids in front of Google Classroom and then calling that a school day when there's no replacement for our teachers' instruction, and I thought some of that work sometimes was just it wasn't linking really to what they were doing in class. So this one I would be on board with.
Yeah, and it will not be a substitute to a comparison to an equivalent day of in-school instruction. I think we've learned that, remote learning does play a part in the educational process, but there's nothing like being in a classroom, interacting with peers, getting direct instruction. This is kind of a stopgap measure because of weather, but we're not going to stick a kid on a computer for 7 hours. It's not appropriate for the child nor for the teacher as well. And honestly, we may have parents who decide that their kid will not attend, and we would consider that to be an absence, either excused or unexcused. So we'll account for all the finer details. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I give our folks a lot of credit because they're really asking what about this, what about this, what about this? And I think we'll have a good product by the time we're done.
Yeah.
Just to make note, we did not get snow yet, so nobody can blame this on me, even though I've been hoping for it. No, I appreciate the work that's going into this. I mean, that's why I was curious. There's a lot of work to go into 4, maybe 5 days. More snow, hopefully, be a few more days, schools, snow days. But definitely appreciate that. I know for my daughter, when seeing her do a blizzard bag versus when remote options, when we're in remote, there was a little bit different bounce in her step, being able to interact with the teacher and other students on things versus sitting and doing a packet of, each has their place, but I appreciate you looking at it for continuous improvement. So appreciate everybody's, direction on this.
Yeah, even, I know it's not the same as being in class, but it's the next best thing, and those Google Classrooms are not. It's, you're relying on these kids to go and do their stuff, and not all of them are that way. I lived that. But I appreciate the looking into it.
All right. Any other discussion on this? All right. We'll move to the next agenda item on 2021-2022 background checks, courtesy payment for new subs.
Yeah, so as an administrative team, it is our job to communicate to the board and to the public all of the celebrations when things are going really well. It is also our duty to come here when there are challenges and to make the community and the board aware of those challenges. We have a challenge right now with our number of substitute teachers. We need more substitute teachers in the district. We've taken efforts, we've increased the sub pay. We have tried to reach out through parent communications, through social media. We're going to continue to do the best we can to promote individuals to come to be substitute teachers for us. And I just wanted to highlight very quickly what the impact looks like when we talk about instructional impact. So our lack of availability of substitute teachers does really a number of things. First of all, it causes our classroom teachers to pick up a lot of extra coverage. When they do that, they're missing out on plan periods. They might be missing out on important meetings, curriculum planning. They have to go and cover for another teacher. We also sometimes have doubling up. So one class, if the teacher's not available, will be canceled, and we will send the children to a different class, now creating a burden for that classroom teacher who has double the students. And, we also have a situation where we've had our administrators in the classroom covering classes, having to defer a lot of their duties, doing a lot of those activities much later after hours than they would had we had a substitute. And then another area that is impacted that really concerns me is, we have a program called Response to Intervention or Response to Instruction. This program provides supports to students that may be struggling or didn't get a concept originally. We have interventionists, RTI interventionists that work specifically with students to help get them where they need to be. When we don't have substitutes, we will sometimes pull from our RTI interventionists to go into a classroom because we need to have an adult supervising that classroom. When that happens, it really impacts the integrity and the fidelity of our RTI programming, meaning struggling learners don't get the support that they need. So these are all impacts that really concern me, particularly when we have our classroom teachers who are already working really hard during a pandemic and are now stepping up and covering for their colleagues. I get concerned about burnout, right? It's still early in the year. What effect will this have when our teachers and our administrators are doing this in March and April? That concerns me. So with that said, I'm going to get off my soapbox, so we need to remove as many barriers as we can to getting people come and sub in our buildings. We need to do a better job promoting what a wonderful school district this is and the support that we need from the community to come and substitute teach in our buildings. So one of the areas that I'm bringing to the board for consideration, if you are an individual who's considering substituting, you fill out an application, you come in for an interview, you have reference checks done, and then you have a background check. Now, currently, a substitute teacher has to pay $48.25 to have that background check done. That's before the individual even knows if they really want to sub. In order to just try it on, they have to pay the $48.25. What I would like to do is remove that barrier. Let's eliminate this fee for the 2021-2022 school year. The district would incur the cost. At this rate, it's not a lot of money. And quite honestly, if it did become a large expenditure, what a great problem that would be for us to have. That is a small step. It's a token step. It may not yield future substitutes, but at least it's something that we can do that might encourage people. If you're thinking about substituting, when you're thinking about service and service to the school, please consider signing up to be a substitute. If the board were to approve this action, there would be no financial cost to an individual who may want to go through the process of becoming a substitute teacher and just come in and try it. Because I believe if you come in this building and you work with some of the teachers and you work with some of our students, you're going to find that substitute teaching is a very rewarding endeavor.
So let me start, because I have no problem waiving this one, but I'd even go beyond that. Is if somebody's coming in to substitute for a day, let's just say a day, half of their pay is going towards this fee. Why don't we just remove this? And this is something district pays, not just this coming year, but just in general, just going forward. I don't understand that one. So that's my suggestion here on this.
You're saying that we cover the fee, not remove the background check, right?
Yes, the remove the fee.
You said remove the
Yeah,
fee.
we can't remove the background check.
No, remove the fee.
Yeah.
No. We still have to check for people like you.
Yeah,
So-
right. All my,
No, I think we should
Closet
remove the
secrets, I don't
fee going forward. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Why should somebody pay to come to work here? I mean, they're already, it doesn't make sense to me, quite honestly.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be a big expense anyway,
Right. So,
unless you get thousands and thousands of people wanting to be substitutes.
What a wonderful problem that would be.
right. So, I mean, I'd like to make just the motion to remove this fee going forward, period. Not even put a time on it. But So,
I'm in support of that. I just have a question. When we have a new hire, who pays for their, do we do that already?
They pay for it, yes. And
So, like,
that
with a new
is
teacher.
really statewide. School districts typically would have the candidate pay for their background check. And I would say that there's a difference between a substitute teacher who has a lower rate of pay and doesn't have consistent work versus an employee who's going to come on and potentially work for the district for years.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, so, okay.
so that's my motion, to remove, for the district to pay the fee. Period.
Second?
Any discussion? Jay?
I support it. I like the idea of it. I don't know if we need to jump into permanently at this point in time. Maybe do it for the remainder of this school year, see how it goes, see how much cost we incur, and then maybe bring it back to the table prior to next year to see if it's something that we do want to push forward into the future.
Historically, how
this-
much has that gone up each year?
Not a lot.
No.
Hasn't changed it hasn't changed materially for several years.
I just had a comment to what Jason said. If I recall, we've been having issues with subs for at least the last several years.
Yeah.
So I would agree with you if it seemed like it was pandemic-based or something, but where we've continued to have this issue, I know it's the issue with para substitutes for sure, and regular classroom, so.
So the reason I asked that question was almost to wonder how much it goes up, like if we need to like up to a certain amount, just so that we don't someday down the line be like, or maybe it doesn't really matter.
I don't know, for me, it's $48.
Oh, no, I know
And
that, it's $48
yeah.
now, that's why I was asking, like, how much has it gone up? Because $48 is not a big deal, but like, if it keeps going up. if it's-
So let me ask another question then. When we get the background checks back, do we own those and keep those, or do we give them to those substitute teachers so that they could potentially use it at a different school district?
No, we destroy those records after they are reviewed.
Okay.
But that also means that the substitute has to have a background check at every district they would like to substitute at, which becomes unwieldy from an expense perspective
Right.
for some of them.
Which I would say then that adds an aspect of maybe people wanting to go to Hampstead if the other districts aren't covering it. Just another benefit.
Any other discussion? All in favor? All right, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Thompson, for bringing that forward to us. All right, the last item on our current business is policy readings. First reading of CBI and CBIR. This was the superintendent evaluation. And again, just to give everybody a little bit the background for those that have been staying in touch with us for the last 4 or 5 months. This was the evaluation that we as the board met over the summer to evaluate and change things around a little bit to make more current. And then at the end of the summer, late August timeframe, we turn it over to the superintendent to evaluate the CBIR with his directs, and then to the policy committee to look at if we should shift dates around as far as when we start to evaluate and then complete evaluation. And so what you have in here is for the first reading. I don't know if anybody from the policy committee wants to add on to that. Any discussions?
I wasn't there. I couldn't make it. I know.
Background check?
No, the only thing that I would add to it is you would mention that we were looking at potentially changing around the dates. One of the questions that we had in the past is we're evaluating the superintendent basically immediately following the town elections. So new members are coming in and some of their first meetings are grading and rating the superintendent, which doesn't really make it seem like it's an accurate portrayal of what the superintendent has done. We tossed around a lot of different ideas, a lot of different dates, trying to push it forward, trying to just streamline it so that we could do it prior to the elections. And between budget season, election season, the deliberatives, just that time of year, it really didn't make sense to push it forward and rush the process. By rushing the process, we're doing more harm than good, and we're cutting off our nose to spite our face. We're not giving a proper evaluation to the superintendent because we're trying to rush the process from beginning to end. So we actually circled back to basically leaving the timing similar to where it is today. Most of the town election years for us, it's 2 members that are being replaced. So the majority of the board is still in place and intact to convey that evaluation to the superintendent. So we basically decided to leave it as is.
I have a question that might seem weird, but like you said, so like the next election, so there'd be 2 seats open. Can you have those two people do the evaluation ahead of time? No, you can't do that. That's why I asked.
Has to be sitting board members who conduct them. Because I get that, you're right. I mean, it would
Yeah, well,
like.
because it would just make sense, like, while they were still seated, to have those board members do the evaluation, but.
Right. But then you would have you could have up to 7 evaluations. So that's the
I was just trying to see if there was a way to
No, I-
adjust that.
No, it's a good thought.
And then part of the policy as well is the chair and the vice chair are the ones who present the evaluation to the superintendent. And if they're no longer in that position, if they're no longer on the board, that creates more gray area as far as how we present it.
Makes sense.
I do appreciate also, it's not called out, but just the ranking here, or the scoring system, with some sort of verbiage behind it instead of just a 1, 2, 3, 4. So definitely appreciate the work done on that. Melissa, thank you. All right. So it's been a while since we've done a reading of a policy, Melissa. This is now where we go to vote. We do vote for this, correct?
That's correct. The board could make a motion to vote on the first reading, so you'd have the option to just approve the policies for the first reading, and if you did that, that would mean they would go to the next school board meeting for second reading and adoption.
I mean, on this one, we've done a lot of work on this. I'd be okay with waiving first and going right to second, depending on how board members feel about this, or if they want time to read through it. But I feel that we've spent probably more on this policy than we have in some of our board meetings in general.
Realistically, for those that aren't on the policy committee, we didn't really change much. We discussed last time around that we went from the 6 number ranking scale down to the 4, and why we did that. But most of the verbiage that we had when we were coming up with the questions, when we were going over this during the summer, that really wasn't changed. So I would agree with David that we could potentially go to second reading and approval now.
So, David, it is a little tricky to waive second reading without, there may be some posting requirement.
Maybe somewhat,
Maybe a posting requirement that you're going to be waiving second reading. Did we post? I don't think we posted that in the agenda. I would want to be careful around that one. It just gets a little bit tricky procedurally. If you did your first reading and then next meeting you just accepted, you just voted on it at the second reading and final adoption, that would probably be okay as well.
Okay.
It's just a little tricky, and we've run into this before, and I'm not sure why, but it gets a little tricky to waive
All right.
policy without posting that you're going to waive the policy.
I mean, I have no problem with voting on it then and just say, voting on the first and bring it to the second reading. But I believe we've had plenty of times in the past that we've waived first and went right to second reading.
Did you post that?
That's where I think that if we do just procedurally wise, go with just the first reading this time and bring it to the next board meeting, but have you look into this as well so that
Yeah.
we know for the future reference. Because I could swear there's been a number, I'd say almost every other time we do a policy reading, that if it's something that we're pretty good with, we're not going to read it between now and then. So,
I can look into it. Melissa and I can take a look into it to see, and if there is a requirement that you post that you'll be waiving the policy in the agenda.
Right.
You know, waiving the first read. I almost feel like that's what it might be, but we'll check, and then in the
Okay.
meantime, so as not to be procedurally defective, it might be good just to
right.
accept first reading.
All right, so we'll be looking for a motion for this time just to approve first reading then, right?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? The only thing I'll add to this for the public is, you know, when this is posted, CBI and CBIR, you can see the work that went into this was really looking at, you know, setting up the superintendent for success and concentrating on, you know, the student learning. So I think you'll see a lot of the work that has been done if you look at past CBI and CBIR and compare it to this one. There is a lot of good work that went into this to keep the students learning in the forefront of our minds. So definitely appreciate a lot of hard work on this one. So I'll call all approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's see, board comments and correspondence. Go over to Jason.
All set.
Caitlin?
Nothing.
The only thing I'll say is some good playoffs going right now. I know the Storm has canceled the playoffs for the day today, but looking forward to the rest of the week. So, and I think, I don't know, Miss Noel, correct me if I'm wrong, the girls soccer team and girls field hockey are in the playoffs, and then there's something going on with track also with state meet was last week. Okay, sorry about that. How'd they do? Very well. They did very well. Thank you. All right, that's all I got.
So I had the pleasure of attending the New Hampshire School Board Association Delegate Assembly. It was in Concord. Everyone was in person. There were 50 delegates, so representation from 50 of the school districts in New Hampshire. I'll just highlight, it was a 2 to 3 hour meeting. It was actually pretty interesting. And the purpose of the meeting is to approve and or amend policies initiated by the Board of Directors, as well as adopt resolutions. And to be a part of the Hsdsb Policy and Resolution Manual, resolutions have to be adopted for 3 consecutive years. And the thought is, you know, we want to make sure we have consistent thinking in the policies and how we're viewing the certain issues. So there were 7 proposed continuing resolutions. This is the second consecutive year, all of which were approved. I can just go through a couple of them. So one was the restriction of the possession of firearms on school property, with the exception of law enforcement. There was COVID-related policy around equity in families having internet access, so providing the financial support. Then they talked about differentiated aid. So this is for free and reduced lunches, and how it should not be impacted by the pandemic-related enrollment decline. And the policy or the resolution is to allow whatever enrollment is higher, pre-pandemic or pandemic, would be what the aid would be based upon, if that makes sense. And then the other one was, or one of the other ones was to reinstitute full school building aid funding to state-funded levels greater than state appropriations prior to 2011. So those were all approved for the second consecutive year, so they'll come up ahead in 2022. And then there were 6 new resolutions proposed by districts across the, school boards across the state. And of the 6, 2 were adopted. See if I can read my notes. So the first one relates to diversity and inclusion. So basically supporting local control over curriculum when it comes to topics such as racism, sexism, really emphasizing that free dialogue around these topics is an important part of education. And then there was a second amendment, second resolution. It was an amendment to RSA 91A, which regards access to public meetings. And the amendment was to allow for remote participation for board members in official meetings, regardless if we're in a pandemic or not. I was actually one of 9 who voted against this. I feel as public figures, it's very important for us to be live together, face to face. I think it's invaluable for the community to see us all together, connected and committed. It did pass, but I did vote against it. And then one other resolution that was, it was not passed, but it was supported, was to maintain a school representative scholarship fund for students who are a part of the school board during their high school career. It wasn't adopted as a resolution because they didn't think it fit the criteria, but they are actually going to be working on a program, and more information will come out in the later winter timeframe. That sums it up.
Thank you.
Just for me, I guess I had the 2 or 3 strategic planning meetings, and it's been really great. There's been a lot of collaboration, a lot of feedback, a lot of good back and forth, and I think, we're heading in a good direction there.
Good. Thank you. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Mr. Thompson?
There's nothing under personnel reports.
Okay.
Under the superintendent report, just want to highlight a couple of great things that are going on in the building. So this week is National Red Ribbon Week. Many of you may be aware that this is a national campaign to call focus on alcohol, drug, and violence prevention awareness. So there's developmentally appropriate activities going on at both the central school and the middle school. It looks a lot like a Spirit Week here, specifically at the middle school, but there's a lot of good things going on. Also, we have coming up next week our parent-teacher conferences on November 1st and 2nd. Those conferences are being held via Zoom this year. As Aaron had indicated, we're in the midst of our strategic planning process. At this most recent meeting, we discussed priorities. So previous meeting, we looked at values. We're looking at priorities now. We're also in the process with our focus group of looking at a stakeholder survey to collect feedback from individuals that can't be part of this process. That's staff and that's parents as well, so they can expect a survey that we're going to send out shortly via Thought Exchange so that community members can participate in the strategic planning process. Real quick, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole, who's just going to give an update on the tech for the CAF.
Hello, and if I could mention clubs too, I would like to do that. So the RFP went through, we've been in touch with the vendor, I've written the grant activity through our grants management system, and we are waiting to hear back from the Department of Ed for that grant money to be approved. We cannot move forward with the vendor until we have that initial approval to pay for the deposit. So I have several emails out to the Department of Ed to see if we can't expedite it. We also have several activities from Summer Learning Academy that we're still waiting for approval for, so we can make payment to our vendors.
Awesome.
So that's probably a little bit of the, I don't want to say bad news, but that's a little bit like on hold where it's in process. So I will keep the board up to date as soon as I have an answer from them. We'll be moving forward as fast as we can with that. The good news is our clubs are well underway. We started last week with Let Go Your Mind Club and American Sign Language at the Central School on Monday. And here at the middle school, we have a lot going on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And we have several students who are still enrolling in after-school homework club. There's still room, and there's still room in the Hawks Happening Club. So I'm really excited about all of the momentum for that. And it really shows that people are interested and excited, and they filled up very quickly. So we have several, families on wait lists that we're going to be honoring round B as a priority.
Awesome.
And we have teachers offering proposals. We'll be seeking those proposals in December from teachers, but we already have some in the works for session B. So there'll be more to come.
Thank you.
And then lastly, I just want to give a couple of updates under our, pandemic response. So last week, here at the middle school, we held our Safer at School screening program. That provides COVID-19 testing for asymptomatic individuals. This is an optional program. We had approximately 25 individuals take part in that. That included students and staff. We were not able to identify any positive cases as a result of that testing. Again, that testing is going to occur the first Wednesday of the month at the central school and the third Wednesday of the month at the middle school. The principals will continue to send out that link and that information. It's optional. It's free. It's of no cost to the district. And again, just another tool in our toolbox when it comes to COVID mitigation. We spent a lot of time talking about masks. There are other mitigation strategies that we're using, and I believe they're highly effective. Additionally, we have been in contact with the Department of Health and Human Services and are looking at the possibility of doing rapid on-site antigen COVID-19 testing for students. Again, another challenge that the district can face if we have a symptomatic student and we send them out for a COVID test. We've had situations where that child could be negative and can't return to school for 3 or 4 days. If we are able to qualify for this program through the Department of Health and Human Services, it's free. A test could be administered on site, and in some cases, we could have the student back to class in a very short amount of time. There's an application process that we're in the midst of filling out. And again, there are some challenges to this. Admittedly, staffing. Staffing is an issue. But we're going to try to work through that. And if this is something that we can bring to Hampstead, again, another optional program and another strategy. And then lastly, as David had indicated, the FDA is getting ready to approve emergency youth authorization for the COVID-19 vaccine for ages 5 to 11. I've been in touch with the Department of Health and Human Services, and right now we are on track to be able to offer a vaccine clinic. Don't have a lot of the details. We're still working through that. But the idea would be to offer a vaccine clinic really as close to the release date as the vaccine as possible. We know that supply and getting appointments with pediatricians is going to be a challenge. We think it would be wonderful if there was a convenience factor. We could offer it either during the school day, after school, or even on a Saturday. I believe that we can rally a lot of volunteers and a lot of individuals that would help out with this effort. Again, for anyone interested in the vaccine, it would be optional, and it would just be a matter of convenience for them. I should have more information at the next board meeting that I can share in regards to that clinic. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that board members might have about any of these items or anything else.
Board members, questions?
No questions?
No, none at this time, Mr. Thompson. So with that, I don't have any other, there's no other old business to address. So we will be going into a non-public, so I'll be looking for a motion to go into non-public under RSA 91A:3, 2, C, and L.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Melissa, would you mind taking the roll call?
Sure.
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Time is 8:39.
Thank you. All right, Hampstead Community, we've coming out of non-public, and we're going to be making a motion to seal the minutes.
Yep, I'll make the motion to seal the non-public meeting minutes due to the divulgence of the information would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself.
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Melissa, you want to take the roll call on that?
Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Ms. Malcolm?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Smith, excuse me.
I got you. Don't worry. I've been called worse.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
All right. And that'll, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And thank you all for a great night.